Live from the gateway to the West, this is Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie on Premier Radio Networks.
Absolutely, and up next we talk about the WebBot technology. Just what is it? What does it do? How does it predict the future? George Ure and Clif Hyde join us in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. WebBot technology, predicting the future, but how does it work? Let me introduce two very special guests. George Ure, business consultant, financial writer, publishing www.urbansurvival.com, independencejournal.com, peoplenomics.com. He's been a senior vice president of an international airline, a vocational school president. He had a 2-year sales and marketing assignment for a major software company. And this website, urbansurvival.com, focuses on long-wave economics. He also has another one out called halfpasthuman.com. Here's George Ure. George, welcome back. How are you?
Pretty good, George. How are you?
Good. All is well. Let's bring in Clif Hyde as well. Clif has a patent on a computer-assisted reading technology, which allows reading from computer screens at up to 2,000 words per minute, reaching into other areas of hidden potential within language used by humans. Now, he's been developing a system of software internet agents. They're like search engines use and other proprietary processing methods to predict future events. We're going to talk about the past and the present events from the WebBot technology. The software project began in 1997. Here's Clif Hyde. Hey, Clif, welcome back as well.
How are you doing, sir?
Good. All is well. George, let's pick up again. New listeners, many new listeners, probably saying, what the heck is WebBot technology? Want to explain that for us?
Well, very briefly, I was happily writing my website in 2001 in, May-June time frame of 2001. Got an email from a fellow who wrote some very interesting words about a large tipping point that was just ahead on the horizon. And it was really strange because he admitted to being a software engineer and having done a lot of work in spider technology and using similar technology to what the search engine to use to go out and sniff out new content on the web. And he sent me a long description, which I published on the Urban Survival website. And in it was predicted a tipping point after which life would never be the same. It would have aspects of military and accident. There were some geographical descriptors which included a cloud of language over, strangely enough, Las Vegas at about the time when the 9/11 perps were found to be out there. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And then my wife and I were living on our sailboat in San Francisco, and we woke up the morning of 9/11 on the boat, turned on CNN, and oh no, this is what a tipping point is. Right. And so all of a sudden I got real serious about, okay, who's this guy? Where's he pulling this stuff off the internet? And how's he getting there? And we've been holding these conversations, and Clif has done amazing work over the past 10 years publicly, but he actually had used, what, Clif, picking Microsoft's Hi?
Yes, but that was mere self-defense. I mean, we all kind of knew something was going to happen then. But that's the only time, I can safely say that's really the only time I ever used the technology for personal gain.
Or preventing personal loss.
That was really more it, yeah. Just before the crash, I was able to determine from running a small amount of the normal size run that things were a bit wonky and it was time to get out of the market. I think I was out at a few days before it all really went south, and I was within a few points of Microsoft's all-time high. That was the only stock I had, and I had probably 44 shares, so it wasn't like there was a huge amount at risk, but it meant a lot to me at the time.
And the software scans specific words. Do you have to program it to search for something?
Actually, I program that level of it is done in a language called Prolog, which is developed, it actually means programming and logic, and it allows you to develop these things called predicates, which are little statements that allow it to evaluate on its own. So to a certain extent, the list is indeed populated, but it's not like anymore I actually sit there and do it. It's pretty much automated.
Okay, now, George, tell me, when you look at specific topics, do you have to go into the programming and say economy or wars, or does it spit things out that seem to be unusual, and then you're able to find it?
My involvement with a project is more as a sounding board. We deliberately keep the project cellular, and one of the reasons we do that is we're very concerned about the security of this stuff. It lives on Clif's servers, not mine, and we'll kick around a lot of concept, a lot of idea stuff, but when it comes down to anything having to do with the first pass through the data, throwing it up in model space and so forth, that's Clif's bailiwick. I don't want to know that because, as I guess you could figure out, those who know this kind of stuff have value. I mean, there's a danger of being a messenger and being too right too often.
I want to talk a lot about your recent reports, and we're going to look at things that are happening in the future and give our listeners news they can truly use. But let's talk, because back in, I think it was October of last year, you were both mentioning a crisis with Israel and Iran. I haven't seen it happen yet, and also the swine flu. You thought that was going to really get out of control. Can we say at this point that you were wrong on that front, or what?
The Israeli thing won't pop off. Insofar as we can tell, there's no what we call release language that would support the idea of an attack now. The only conceivable situation that we can see, given the mathematics involved with our particular method, would be as if the attack actually occurred in such a way that there was no release. In other words, it would have to have the components of an unexploded bomb or something, where after an attack there was no, it's all over. Rather, everybody would still be really tense. We have this incredible building tension that goes up until July, and then we have a plateau that holds at about a 2 to 3% grade until November 8th. And November 8th through 11th is a tipping point, but that would look to be a lot larger than an Israeli attack. So I actually don't think the Israelis are going to go attack the Iranians, or ourselves are going to go attack the Iranians this year, certainly.
One of the things, George, that's difficult about looking into the future with language is that take the H1N1, the headlines. The emotional value, the people freaking out, getting in lines, all the government hype, and as you noted, the throwing away 70 million doses of vaccine now.
Yeah,
right.
Got to toss it out.
Yeah, it really does. But you see, when you look into the future of language, you can't really tell if it's real. In other words, thousands of people dying, or if it's a headline or a meme from the future that thousands of people may die, because those little words, the conditionals like may or the hype could, those kinds of things get lost. What the technology is extremely good at is picking out topics well ahead of time that are likely. For example,
well, George, let me intrude right there and address the swine flu issue, especially relative to the Olympics, because you're quite correct. At an archetype level, we were 100% correct, because there was an outbreak, if you will, of disease at that period of time, but it had nothing at all to do with swine flu, and that's where we screwed up. Rather, the outbreak of disease was in the processing of the supporting chemicals for the fast food industry, and they had that major recall and the threat of everybody getting salmonella. So there was a lot of headlines relative to disease that broke out at the appropriate time. I was just, my monkey mind was wrong in assigning it a value relative to the H1 flu issue.
Okay, and you both seem to be right on with the economy.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yes, I don't like that at all, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we're both, actively promoting among our personal circle of friends. We're kind of recluse type guys, but those 3 or 4 people we know were urging to put gardens in and so forth. And by the way, speaking of which, there may be a hidden, not even especially hidden message. You see where Michelle Obama is, again, expanding the size of the garden at the White House.
Yes.
And so when the linguistics point to, massive food shortages because of weather later this year and things like that, we got to look at the linguistics and say, well, is it going to be headlines, food shortage could happen, or one of the runs a couple of years back talked about the fungus among us, and not only did we have a killer fungus show up in the Northwest, but we've now got this UG99 rust that's starting
to wheat,
in the wheat, and the problem is that's one of those creeping out. It's not making big headlines because the mainstream media is not in the trend business. They're in the hold the mirror up today, are you ugly or are you beautiful today kind of thing. The linguistics looking forward are really designed to look over there when you get to this point in the future and then look over in that direction. It's sort of a large guidepost system.
Well, it could be actually quite specific, and we even can reference, and I'll shut up and let you do it, George, because you had more contact there. But look at the specifics we had with the coast-to-coast staff specifically, and those particular bits of linguistics we were correct about, 6-8 months out?
Yeah, I don't know if Lisa told you at the time, George, but I had mentioned to her, and I think we even mentioned it to George Knapp, that you guys were going to go mainstream, and that coast-to-coast cooking show plans aside.
yeah.
That's right. You didn't see that coming, did you?
No.
Yeah, and I thought, that's very correct. I mean, the marketing guys know everybody eats, and they're being sensitive to vegans by not calling it roast and toast, which would have been my choice. But anyway, where were we?
The linguistics around going mainstream and all of the the effects.
And then so you guys end up on Nightline, and I don't know how much more mainstream you can be. But you see, the whole, there's a huge the mainstreaming of this. How would we describe coast to coast?
Well, let's put it this way. From my viewpoint, in terms of massaging the data, coast to coast is a linear object. The amount of data clustered around that particular context of all the people that work there and the effect it has on the planet is in our particular model set, it's a vertical structure. Disease, on the other hand, is this huge pyramid that's very, very wide at the bottom. And so when I'm peering through it, I know we're going to have a disease outbreak, and it's like anybody's guess as to what it's going to be at the moment. But when I'm looking at the coast-to-coast kind of data, I'm looking straight down, and I get to see a very clear view. That's why we were much more correct with that than we were with the H1 outbreak relative to the Olympics.
And your outlook, by the way, apparently, when's your next big jump up?
Well, that's when all of the Wujo goes